My father tried bragging to his friends that he raised me well despite letting my late mother abuse me daily. I called him weak, spineless, and pathetic in front of everyone, and now the whole family has exploded. Posted by you/artistic minute 4365. My father has always been against any confrontation or arguments. He is extremely passive, refuses to stand up for himself, and avoids any conflict. If someone isn't paying attention while walking and bumps into him, he insists it's his own fault. If his employer messed up his salary, he wouldn't bother fixing it. If a mechanic didn't properly repair his car, he would just accept it as is. This unfortunately resulted in a tumultuous childhood with my insanely narcissistic mother. She controlled his every move. She got him to quit his job and become a stay-at-home dad. She had him do every chore. She insulted him at every step. She cheated on him relentlessly and even brought affair partners into our home. She enjoyed making his life miserable every day, and he never questioned it. My extended family, God bless them, were there for me as much as they could be. They tried for years to make my father leave, but he never budged. When she directed her anger at me, in the form of screaming, insulting, or general demeaning, my father never once found the guts to stand up for me or support me. When I was a kid, if I cried to my dad about something my mom did or said to me, he would sweep it under the rug or insist I forget about it. He would even try to justify it. As I grew older, it really set in for me how messed up this was. My mother gladly kicked me out of the house when I was 18, and my father just sat there looking sullen. He didn't say a damn thing. I joined the Air Force almost immediately and got stationed on the other side of the country. The dynamic was awful, and I could have easily gone down the incel route if not for therapy and the amazing people I met along the way. It took years for me to get into a better mental space. I was filled with hatred. My mother left my father 2 years after I got stationed and utterly destroyed him in the divorce. She was unalived a year later in a DUI with one of her affair partners. I took a lot of joy in hearing that it took her hours to unalive, and that's when I knew I really needed help to process things. I'm almost 30 now, have a girlfriend who is perhaps the best thing to ever happen in my life, and she fully understands the situation with my family. I have learned not to allow myself to be consumed with anger and resentment by my past, or so I thought, and instead put that energy toward my future. I have been extraordinarily low contact, nearly no contact, with my father since I left. As much as I try, I cannot make that connection with him. I recently went to a family reunion and brought my girlfriend with me. My father was there since it was his side of the family. They have many issues with him, but he's family, so whatever, I guess. I made sure to avoid him. I was chatting with my uncles when I heard my father talking in the background. He was discussing how a coworker of his was going through a divorce after discovering his wife was having an affair and was positioned to have a very favorable outcome. My father remarked that his coworker should work to forgive his wife and, in his own words, set a good example for unity and forgiveness, and how he believed he had set a great example for me in that regard. I swear it was like a switch went off in my head, and I was mentally back to being that rage-filled 18-year-old. All these years, and he never learned a damn thing. I turned to him and asked if he was effing serious. He looked at me and started to stutter. I know the next minute was pure word vomit, and I can't relay it perfectly, but to sum it up, I shouted that he was a pathetic father, a pathetic man, that his family all knows he's a disgrace of a human being who would rather let his son be treated like crap than defend him because he's a effing coward. No one would ever see him as an example to live by, his wife would rather sleep with half the neighborhood than even touch him, and he should never ever believe anyone respects him. I began to derail and ramble between my shouting, and my girlfriend quickly took me out and drove me home. It was insane how quickly being away from him made me feel better. She just held me when we got back and told me it was okay. Again, she's the best thing to ever happen to me. I was ashamed of how I lost it and am now going to resume therapy, that's a given. However, I'm glad I finally unloaded what always needed to be said onto him. Extended family is pretty mixed in their reactions. His brothers, my uncles, said it was time for him to hear it from me. My grandparents are pissed that I did it in front of the entire extended family, with some saying I should have done it behind closed doors instead of in front of everyone. Relevant comments. Commenter. All I can say, based on your post and this interaction, is that your anger is deeply misguided. You're failing to recognize the truly horrifying thing. You're behaving like the very mother you should actually hate. Ops response. Oh, trust me, I fully hate her as well, but she's gone, and there's no use holding a grudge against a dead person. I had hoped, though, that after his son made him an outsider in his life, his family openly joked to his face about his failings as a father, his ex-wife drained him of everything and left him starting over in a one-bedroom apartment, and his friends slowly left him one by one out of embarrassment, that maybe, just maybe, he would have had at least one moment to reflect and consider that he should have done things differently. Update 2 days later. Thanks for the advice and recommendations, even among some of the responses calling me the jerk. However, some of them needed to be addressed because they were either hilarious or cringe-worthy. Some of the responses were very angry, and they confused me at first, until I saw their comments further down or checked their profiles and saw rants about double standards or complete non-sequitur ramblings about women. So yeah, not helpful advice, but they served as great dark reflections of how I could have turned out if not for the support in my life. Some attempted to portray my dad as a humble, kind, caring, sensitive old man, and made it seem like I was just being a big bully. This was a good insight into how enablers of abuse get away with so much in today's world, because so many people forget that they are part of the abuse themselves. Others tried to mentally dissect me or have a gotcha moment to pull apart my story. That was generally asinine, and I had to step away from those before they asked for my cranial measurements or something. So, it was pretty much the next morning when I realized I needed to address the events of the night before. I first spoke to my girlfriend and gave a sincere apology for having her see me like that. She reassured me that nothing was wrong. She's known me for years, has always known me to be level-headed, and understands why I snapped. She has her own history of dealing with narcissistic families, so she absolutely understands the dynamic. She only really suggested that it would be best to work on spending time around my extended family since my father will always be there. I told her not to worry, that I would immediately talk to them afterward to figure that out. So, that part's fine. I may have looked kind of like a jerk in front of her, but I'm making sure that doesn't happen again. I also informed her of my intentions to resume therapy to keep myself steady, which she was happy to hear. I called my grandparents and sincerely apologized for putting such a sore dent in their family reunion. I told them it wasn't appropriate, and while it felt good to say those things to him, it should have been done privately, not in front of everyone. I also explained that going forward, as much as I love spending time with them, since the family always gathers as one group, which includes my father, I need to distance myself occasionally until I feel comfortable being around him again. I reassured them that I'm not, nor would I ever, establish an ultimatum or make demands of them. Either way, I just need to step back for now. I guess during my apology and explanation, I was kind of going on a tangent because my grandfather interrupted me to tell me to calm down. He explained that after I left, people started to separate or slowly leave, and eventually, they were able to talk to my father one-on-one. Apparently, seeing me freak out led to my grandmother having a mini freak out of her own when she spoke to my father, which resulted in her kicking him out. While I have a great relationship with both of my grandparents, my grandmother has always been extra protective of me, so seeing me that way must have set off a fire in her. My grandfather then said that it's become a bit of an open family secret that my father is failing. His brothers taunt him about it, and they generally don't have a great relationship with him, while for my grandparents, it's always been uneasy. But seeing me the other day and how much it still affects me has really clicked for a lot of people that the situation was truly bad. They began to apologize, saying they were sorry if they didn't do enough, to which I very adamantly responded that they did more than anyone could have expected. It got very emotional for a minute, but it culminated in them telling me that they've decided to distance themselves from my father for the time being. They've given him the ultimatum that unless he does some deep introspection and regularly goes to therapy, that distance may become permanent. My extended family, I've been told, are going to try and reach out or call, but I asked my grandparents to relay to them that it's not necessary, and that I'm fine and sorry for ruining the day. Once again, they told me I shouldn't apologize for being hurt. Since then, a few extended family members have sent some messages, with the general consensus being that it's okay, though some older members are complaining about my lack of respect toward my father. And finally, I texted my father, hoping to meet at a local coffee shop for a final talk. When I met him, he didn't look good. I think his parents tearing into him finally got the message through. I had so many things I could have said, but instead, I asked him first if his coworker took the advice he gave him well. He just said that neither the coworker nor several others interact with him anymore. I then asked if he truly, 100% believes that everything he did for me as a child was for my benefit. He didn't really say anything. Finally, I asked if he has any regrets about how I was treated as a child and whether he thinks he did anything wrong. He looked utterly defeated and mumbled that he could have done more. I could have poked and prodded or gone on another rant, but instead, I told him this should be goodbye, and I hope he gets the help he needs. I think finally unloading my frustrations was what I needed to be able to move on and find peace. I absolutely need to stay on track with therapy and admit that a public outburst wasn't okay, but I think I'll be fine now. Second update 3 weeks later. Things have progressed over the last couple of weeks, and I now have broader context about my family. Long story short, a lot was hidden from me. My father was an absolute D-bag to his family, and that's why they treat him the way they do. I received a lot of feedback, and one thing that stood out was people questioning whether my extended family could have contributed to the abuse, which could explain why my father was so feeble. Since I've been trying to work on my relationship with my family, I figured it was time to ask the hard questions before going further. I met with my dad's brothers, who invited me out to a popular lunch spot. For context and clarity, Dale is the oldest brother, he is married and has a daughter and a son. My father is the second oldest, self-explanatory. John is the second youngest, also married with a son, and Bill is the youngest, married with 3 daughters. So, we met up, and I ripped the band-aid off by asking about my father growing up, what he was like beyond the basics I knew, and what's really going on with their relationship. Dale sighed and basically summed up that, besides what I already know, there's a lot of backstory I'm unfamiliar with that they never shared because it was never the right time or place. What I've always known is that my father was fairly normal when he was young. He was a little shy but fantastic academically, played sports occasionally, and had a close-knit relationship with his brothers. However, everything started going downhill when he met my mom during his junior year of high school. What I didn't know was that my father was a guiding figure for his two younger brothers and was generally seen as one of the nicest people, with a bright future ahead of him. My grandparents adored him, and he even became a bit of a golden child, but no one minded because of how well he treated everyone. The reason his family doesn't respect him now is due to how his behavior changed once my mother became attached to him. It started out simply. My mother acted rude and distant toward the family. They weren't huge fans of her, but since my father loved her, they tolerated it. She became possessive, slowly isolating my father and convincing him to give up his ambitions and goals. The family grew concerned and spent a long time trying to talk to him, urging him to leave her. My father didn't budge and began lashing out at them. When I was born, my extended family tried to approach my father about my mother's attitude. My father became angry and even threatened to report them for harassment. He was in complete denial about her behavior. When Dale's wife was struggling with fertility issues, my mother sent her appalling and cruel messages. Furious, Dale confronted my father, but instead of defending his sister-in-law, my father told Dale to drop it and even justified my mother's behavior. Dale punched him, and the situation nearly involved the police. From that point on, Dale hated him. John grew to despise my father when my mother insulted his son, who has mild physical disabilities. Instead of defending John's son, my father made a joke about what she said, which solidified John's hatred for him. Finally, Bill, who had always idolized my father, tried to tell him that my mother had made a pass at him and urged him to get a divorce. My father's response was a furious call filled with hate and words that completely severed their relationship. To sum it all up, the more time my father spent with my mother, the more he began to mirror her attitude. When my family saw signs of abuse toward me and tried to intervene, my father threatened to lie and accuse them of worse things. My mother had money and lawyers, and she could make their lives hell if they tried anything, and my father was fully willing to let her. They were stuck and could only do so much at a time. The older members of the family, like my grandparents, great-aunts, and uncles, believe in the traditional mindset of sticking together as a family no matter what, while the younger generations want to keep their distance from my father. They're all stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's more they told me, but it essentially boils down to the fact that my father chose to lay on the hill for my mom, ruining his relationships with his brothers in the process. And when she died and left him destroyed, he probably had to come to terms with the fact that it was all for nothing. My grandparents seem unwilling to accept that he's truly lost, or maybe they still hold out hope that he can fix his life. Who knows? It's been a lot to process, and my father confirmed all of this when he called me to ask about family therapy with us. I cut to the chase and asked if what I heard was true, and he said yes. I might have agreed to family therapy before, but now I have no idea. Notable comments. Commenter. You were basically your dad's meat shield throughout your entire childhood, and apparently, that was a pattern. Turns out, the man threw his own siblings under the bus as well. And now the idea is family therapy. If something is so deeply ingrained that he's willing to throw his child and siblings to the wolves just to maintain his own illusion, then I really don't think let's work on our relationship is the way forward. If anything, if I were you, I'd be very wary that this is just his latest attempt to let others take the heat while he stays out of the spotlight, pretending to be the good guy. Third update 2 weeks later. I came to the decision that it was time to cut off my father for good. The more I learned about who he was, the more I realized that nothing good would come from having him in my life. I'm also going to put some minor distance between myself and my extended family on his side until I can process things more. There's just a lot to work through there. I met up with my father one last time in a coffee shop to talk things over. I asked him one last time, why? Why did he do all this? Why did he let his wife treat everyone like crap? Why did he treat his family and me like crap for her? Why did he do all this? He tried to weasel his way out, but I absolutely demanded to know. And he basically answered that it was because he loved her. Yep, that was his stupid answer. He loved her and just clung to her no matter what she did. No matter how much she hurt him or others, he was an insecure man who latched onto the first woman who showed him attention. Even when she slowly destroyed his life, he thought it was better than trying again. I just got up and told him to fix his life, but I wouldn't be a part of it. I hope he has the sense to understand why. No matter how he tried to word it, I had 2 abusive parents. He didn't say anything, just stared at me. Which leads to last night. I got a call from my grandparents that the night before, my dad had tried to call his brothers and make peace. Unfortunately, from what they said, he did it in the most lackluster, avoidant way possible, sparing himself any guilt. That didn't go well. After recent events and old wounds being dug up, they gave him a verbal lashing that made mine look microscopic in comparison. My dad hung up and lost his crap, decimated his entire apartment before packing up what was left and driving off. They only found out because one of his brothers came to check on him. From what they can tell from the few texts they've received, he's lost his mind after decades of crap and is driving to the other side of the country to start fresh. Also, from the minimal communication they've had with him, he's acting incredibly vile toward them, and they say he seems to be acting just like my mother. Edit. Things are progressing/spiraling very quickly, and I'm expecting this whole insanity parade to come to a conclusion within a few days at this rate. I won't make any real update until I have all the facts, but I'm just glad I made the decision to move on. Fourth update 3 months 2 weeks later. For those who stuck around, I'd say it's over and as wrapped up as it can be. My girlfriend/fiancé and I are getting married later this year. My father is alive. He lost his crap and spiraled, but a couple of weeks later, he came back. His apartment obviously barred him from returning and is pursuing legal and financial damages against him. He has no job anymore and is staying with my grandparents. He has hit rock bottom and has finally taken responsibility for his life, his choices, and his damaged relationships. It's too late for a lot of the family, but his parents are seemingly offering some help now that he's finally trying to fix things. However, the extended family as a whole has kind of blown up. My father became a mascot for deeper family issues that had been worsening over time. There are far too many to go over, but when he was finally called out, everyone realized there was no use in ignoring everything else going on. Minor feuds have formed, some people aren't speaking to each other, and some have entered marriage counseling and family therapy. People don't want to live by the but family mentality anymore. My fiancé and I have decided to distance ourselves. We were kind of disappointed, as we had hoped that since her family is insanely toxic, we could lean on mine. But I've come to realize mine has far too many issues to be reliable. Thankfully, we have a fantastic group of friends, so we'll be fine. And that's about it. I'm wrapping this up and moving on to a far less bitter lifestyle.